Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Marvel's Avengers. Highly anticipated title, and a lot of people are concerned about how it will turn out. So, out comes the beta. Plenty of people have gotten their hands on it by now. The reception I've seen has been mixed. There are people who legitimately enjoy their experience, others not so much. I am in the camp of being very concerned about this game, but really want to play the final product, go through the whole campaign before making a final deliberation. But based on what I played on the beta, this seems like one of those games that could be potentially good, mindless fun, but is it going to be that Avengers game that will blow us away, that will live up to the likes of the Arkham series or Spider-Man on PS4? I don't think so. Now, before we get to my issues, let's talk about what I did like about the game. I did really like that each Avenger felt really different from each other. They felt pretty fleshed out and like they did a good job of representing their powers within the game. So, for example, Thor, he's got that combination of hard-hitting melee combat with his hammer, and unique mechanics with that hammer where he can, like, throw it and then call it back a la God of War, and there's some dynamic stuff there, and he has some special abilities that call to his godlike lightning powers. There's Hulk, who is this bulldozer, the bulldozer of the party, lots of AoE melee attacks, smashing the ground and the like, and I love how he can actually like grab enemies and fling them around, like just smash them on the ground or toss them, and so there's some cool elements there. Iron Man I actually felt like was among the more interesting characters to play once I got the hang of him. He plays a lot like an Anthem Javelin, but he's got that unique Iron Man flair with the animations and his arsenal. Yeah, once I got used to him, it was really cool to be able to just like kind of pummel people on the ground, fly up, shoot some people, and dash around and dodge, and once you got used to that mobility and the transition from air to ground, he actually came to life, and he has a really unique fighting style with his animation that's very much how Iron Man would fight. And I thought the Hulkbuster was pretty damn cool when you summon that and like can like dash at enemies, grab them, and like slide them through the ground. So there are a lot of cool animations in this game, I'll give it that. Captain America, I could play very briefly. He was very melee focused, but there were some unique combat mechanics with the shield that made him feel different, even though he filled that, melee combatant role. Black Widow is sort of the ninja of this party, really great mobility, can kind of jump and zip around, lots of quick attacks and flourishes, and some third-person shooter elements. She has like dual gun she can like shoot people with from a distance, and there's a nice flow there. And finally, there's Ms. Marvel, whose melee combat deals a lot of ranged damage. Due to her stretchy limbs, she can deal a lot of area damage with every attack, and that gave her a whole different feeling, and I really enjoyed her ultimate ability to kind of become like stretch herself and really stretch her limbs further and create sort of giant versions of her fists and feet and smash enemies that way. And so each character feeling unique was a big plus. Each Avenger felt like their respective Avenger, and they all have their own unique skill tree. You can really develop their abilities and kind of grow their arsenal of combos and abilities, and so that's how the game kind of gradually teaches you all of their moves. As for combat itself, mechanically, it was solid enough. It was passable, though I did feel like over time it started to feel more and more generic, more mindless, more button mashy, at times really chaotic, and amidst all the chaos there was a lot of jank involved where mobility sometimes didn't feel quite right, or I didn't attack the right enemy when I wanted to. So, especially in tight spaces where there's just like tons of enemies thrown at you, everything just kind of goes chaotic. It's hard to keep track of what's going on. And eventually, combat just kind of stopped feeling engaging. I felt like I was just going through this routine over and over and over again, like I was just going through the motions rather than like really thinking about what enemies are doing. I just felt like I could pull off the same combos over and over again. There are some considerations, like you have to hold down triangle to combat enemies with shields. Holding down triangle performs a heavy attack that takes shields down, and then you can like attack them with light attacks. There's some like dodging and parrying that you can do based on cues that the game presents to you. But generally speaking, I felt like I was just like mashing buttons a lot with the occasional kind of breaking shields and the like. I did feel like some of the special abilities that the Avengers have, you know, you can activate them by pressing the shoulder buttons and the like. The cooldown for those were way too long, so I wasn't using some of the more fun abilities as often as I would have liked. And also, enemy variety was lacking, which didn't help. A lot of them were just sort of samey-looking men in armor or robots, which were uninspired in design. Some enemies were kind of bullet spongy, you know, big, giant health bars. And so attacks against those guys had very little impact. And there were just aspects of combat that just didn't resonate with me. Though I will say that when there are waves of sort of weaker enemies, wrecking them, as, you know, Hulk, for example, who can really bulldoze through weaker enemies, like, that's when you really feel like you have that superpower. That's when you really feel like a superhero. Those fleeting moments, I think, had moments of impact and of fun and giddiness. But, I don't know. The characters feel very distinct from each other. The combat mechanics work. It's just the way combat works right now with the way it's all implemented with the environments and the enemies and the lack of enemy variety and just how much goes on screen sometimes, and how there's just some technical issues with the game that make combat not flow as well as it should. All of that combines into an experience that certainly doesn't live up again to the likes of, say, the Arkham games or Spider-Man on PS4. It isn't a top-tier combat system. Now, I think the most egregious aspect of Marvel's Avengers is that missions feel super generic, super boring, really cookie-cutter. They're pretty tedious more often than not, and they're just lacking in variety. Just about every mission I did was moving from point A to point B. It could be from outside to some kind of interior, or you start in the interior of a building and just move forward. So point A to point B, defeat waves of enemies, and sometimes along the way, while you're fighting enemies, you might be tasked with securing a point. So you have to, like, stay within a circle for a certain period of time, or you have to, like, capture more points than the enemies and maintain those so you can build up a hacking meter or something. Or you might, you know, be attacked by enemies and have to destroy some machinery in the background. And so it was just like that over and over and over and over again. Literally every mission could be pretty much broken down to those objectives. Maybe I'm forgetting one or two, but, you know, they were not particularly memorable. And the only thing that really varied between missions, I felt, was the order in which those same activities happened, and the length of the missions varied here and there, with longer missions stringing together some of these different types of objectives in different ways and in a more extensive way. But other than that, I mean, yeah, you just kind of hop from one mission to another with the war table, and you're taken to just sort of these separate open world areas that are kind of sandboxes. They're relatively small and lifeless. It's just kind of full of enemies or structures where some of these objectives take place. So yeah, not a lot of, I felt, exploration was really kind of encouraged. There are some question marks that you can kind of look for, and those will lead you to occasional, you know, loot and the like, but I don't know, just a very generic open world, all things considered. Some of the vistas could look pretty, others looked pretty generic. It was kind of a mixed bag. Environments, on the outside, on the exterior, you know, you could find some forested areas versus some, you know, like snowy areas. Like, exterior environments did have variety, but when you go inside buildings, especially the AIM facilities, AIM being the megacorp you have to fight against, when you go inside one of their compounds, it all just looks like they copied and pasted assets. It all looks pretty much identical. It was hard to distinguish one mission from the other as a result. And yeah, it was just not fun to navigate through those. It wasn't, like, the environments didn't encourage me to just, like, bask at what's around me. Everything just felt very cookie cutter. I just wanted to kind of just zip past everything. Didn't care much for the environments. I mentioned enemy variety was lacking, which is on top of the environmental variety that's lacking. Save for some exterior variety, but even those kind of look bland. Now, there was a little bit of variety when they introduced a boss battle, Abomination, That broke up a bit of the monotony, and so my hope is that the main campaign will really provide more environmental enemy and boss variety, but it's hard to say. I feel like they're going to reuse a lot of the same environments and interiors and assets over and over and over again, but I hope I'm proven wrong in the final release. And then on top of sort of the lackluster missions, there's the fact that loot progression felt to me rather insubstantial. I did like how you could unlock skills for characters, but that eventually stops. There will come a point when all of your skills are maxed out, you'll learn characters in their entirety, you'll have all of their movesets. At that point, it's up to loot to really drive that sense of progression forward. Unfortunately, loot just felt pretty also mindless. You kind of just go around collecting loot. When you equip different loot, there's no cosmetic differences. There's no reason to actually look at your loot. All it really is are statistical increases. And so there is a button in the game that you can hold down to auto-equip the highest level gear that you have right now. And so that's kind of what loot became to me. The loot was just, oh, I got some new loot. I'll press, start, go to the gear menu, hold down the button, let the game take care of that, and then I see the numbers go up. And that's really what it came down to. I just saw numbers go up. I didn't feel like I was really looking and browsing through my loot and picking and choosing my builds and like really kind of scrutinizing how I want to build my character. It was just always like start, hold down button, done, and then move on to the next mission. It was just all about getting that number up so that I could approach certain missions that were kind of power level gated, so that I could tackle those more easily. That really is what the progression came down to for me more than anything. Though maybe, once I reach the end game of Marvel's Avengers, maybe they'll have more interesting stuff there, more unique gear that will actually give me that sense of progression that I'm craving for. But I just rarely thought about loot in this game. I did at one point upgrade some of my gear with the resources that I collected in missions. You can use those to level up your gear to a certain extent. And so there was that, but even that just felt like I was just propping up a number rather than really considering a character build. So maybe it's because the beta is limited in scope. We'll see how that develops, but the loot progression for a looter, brawler, or whatever you want to call this, it felt pretty insubstantial, which is not good for a game that so heavily emphasizes loot. I should also say that I think making Marvel's Avengers a looter game was a woefully misguided decision, one that feels based more on monetization rather than what fits with Avengers. I think it should have been sort of a single-player, cooperative, sort of campaign-like experience. I think the looter aspect is going to really drag it down in many regards. It doesn't make sense for these superheroes to be going out there like looting stuff. They've already got their powers. They've got the resources. It should be more about that moment-to-moment gameplay and the set pieces and the story and all of these different things. Like, I don't know why they thought making looting a core component of an Avengers experience would be a good idea. It just does not feel right. This goes doubly true for someone like Tony Stark. The guy's a billionaire. He's got everything he will ever need. It's just weird to see Iron Man, Tony Stark, going out there looting for better gear. I don't know, it doesn't compute. And I mentioned cosmetics and the fact that equipment, when you equip different things, you don't change your appearance. And that's because a lot of the cosmetics will be sold via the marketplace. The cosmetics are the main source of monetization for the game. That is on top of the base $60 price point. Keep in mind that this isn't a free-to-play game. It is going to have microtransactions. A lot of it is going to be cosmetics. And you can actually see that each character has essentially their own sort of battle pass style progression, and the game does allow you to skip battle pass tiers by spending premium currency, so that already gives you an idea for how they're going to monetize the game. Now, from what I understand, you can earn certain cosmetics in-game by, doing missions and by earning in-game currency that you can spend on some of that stuff, but a lot of the cosmetics will be locked behind the marketplace. And from what I understand, no gameplay affecting stuff will be sold through microtransactions, which is good. But at the same time, cosmetics, especially in a superhero game, I think are pretty substantial. Like, one of the things that I enjoyed most about Spider-Man PS4 was all of the different skins you could earn, and I could swap them in and out based on how I was feeling that day. And, like, that aspect is just how heavily that might be monetized is disconcerting to me, because I really want to customize these heroes, though the final monetization model hasn't been revealed. We don't know what the price points will be. If the prices are reasonable enough, maybe many people will be able to tolerate it, but I don't know. Just the monetization model and the business model of Avengers hasn't been very consumer-friendly. There are already exclusive skins that are being locked behind different companies and services, like Verizon has its own unique skin that you can get if you sign up with them or something. Of course, there is the whole Spider-Man being locked behind PlayStation exclusivity, while the other versions don't get their own exclusive characters. It's just every other version, aside from the PlayStation version, they're just straight up getting less content. And so stuff like that doesn't give me hope that the way they monetize cosmetics in this game will be well balanced. But I don't know, we'll see. Now, I'd like to move on to presentation, which is where I feel the game is lacking in many regards. It feels like the game's presented really awkwardly. So as an example, there's a lot of lip syncing issues that I found throughout the game.
Thor, thanks for the assist. We got civilians trapped behind those barricades.
Did he scare away the resistance?
You know, honestly, Kamala, I don't remember anyone being there.
It doesn't feel like the characters in the game are speaking. It feels like there's just dub over the characters.
Must be frustrating. Always one step behind.
You're after the Chimera, aren't you? What are you gonna do with it? Sell it to the highest bidder?
I'm after something much more valuable.
What's that?
I won't spoil the surprise. Hell! How's the cat? Oh, tell Fury I really love being shot at with my own weapons.
We'll keep you updated, and Goose is fine.
Ha! I didn't know you were listening to that part.
I'll be pummeling enemies, and then dialogue appears, and it just doesn't match up with what's going on screen. And so there's just this disconnect that makes me feel like the dialogue isn't really coming from the character. And the dialogue itself, the writing I felt was very poor and cringy and awkward. It feels like they wrote this like it's, you know, like a Saturday morning cartoon, like an animated series type of dialogue. But it clashes with the realism, the realistic graphics that the game offers. So it just feels like everything they say is a one-liner.
Lucky for you, I am mighty.
Thank you, Thor.
Gotta admit it, that was pretty impressive.
Surprise?
Ooh, cocky. I like that. Stay behind cover. All right. Which one of you B-movie extras shot at me? All right. Whose bright idea was this outfit shield trucks with turrets?
Tony!
Oh, right. Mine. It's called photographic reflexes.
It's called unoriginal. Next time, take better notes.
And so you cannot really take anything they're doing seriously because they're cracking jokes or saying something quippy and smartassy so constantly and frequently. It reminds me a lot of like Andromeda and Anthem, the dialogue in those games where you really couldn't take what was going on seriously because everyone was just saying just like really dumb one-liners. That kind of took me out. Iron Man especially is incredibly annoying in this game, which is a shame because I love Iron Man as a character. And, you know, Nolan North, I think he's a really great actor, but I feel like he was directed poorly, and the material itself, it makes Iron Man almost too childish. Like, he is, you know, smartass and he does make childish jokes, but there's a balance to be struck. And Marvel's Avengers version of Iron Man just leans way too much towards the childish side, where everything he says is just a joke in this high-pitched tone and in this grating kind of voice. Like, I don't know. Iron Man just annoyed the hell out of me. And some of these lines that are really annoying and cringy repeat over and over and over again throughout gameplay. And it drove me kind of crazy, honestly.
You're done. Ooh, is it getting out of here? Okay, let's talkie or fighty. This one's from the heart. I'm beaming with pride. I'm beaming with pride. And you can't even sue me because I don't have money now. Watch your eyes, everyone. Okay, let's talkie or fighty. Surprise. This is how we do it. Okay, let's talkie or fighty. All I do is win, win, win.
So those are kind of some of the general topics I wanted to cover. And then there is the technical issues, of which there are many in this game. And, you know, if this beta happened months before the game came out, I would be able to say, you know, they're probably going to fix a lot of these issues. The game comes out in just a couple of weeks. And the fact that it's still marred by all these technical issues, I don't know, that really leaves me deeply concerned, especially considering what happened with titles like Anthem and Fallout 76. Recall that those betas happened not long before the game's launch, and a lot of the people who hoped those games would be good kept saying, you know, this is a beta, it's going to be better, it's going to be a whole lot better when it finally launches, except it really wasn't. With this game being, you know, weeks out, less than a month out, I really don't think they'll be able to fix all of these technical issues, though of course I hope I'm wrong. As for the technical issues that I personally experience, first of all, frame rate. It is woefully unstable. There are times when it runs okay, but you know, when things get busy on screen, you know, more often than not, during combat, even in performance mode, frame rate would just go all over the place, and it made combat feel disconnected and even more janky, and it made just the whole game really clumsy to play. The game crashed on me a number of times, forcing me to restart missions that I already felt were pretty tedious, and to have to do them all over again, that was really frustrating. Matchmaking did not work at all. Just straight up would boot me back to the menu anytime I tried to engage in matchmaking. So I had to play with AI only. And the AI was hit or miss. You know, sometimes it'd do a good job of, like, actually going around and pummeling enemies. But there were missions like the point capturing missions, where I had to capture points A, B, and C, where it felt like they didn't focus on the points at all. I was the only one who was, like, going around taking the points, and so the AI not focusing on those just made those types of missions a hell lot harder than they needed to be. And then there's stuff like AI getting stuck behind objects here and there. The one thing that AI was on top of is whenever I was felled, whenever an enemy took out enough of my health where I was knocked down, and you know, there's that counter running down, and usually the AI would be like reviving me pretty quickly. That was the only thing about AI that I felt was like really well done and smart. Other aspects are hit or miss. Another technical issue worth highlighting is that one time my character Hulk went through this object Hulk wasn't supposed to go through, and I was just kind of stuck there, and I had to like reload from my last checkpoint. Generally, just overall, as a package, the game felt technically unpolished. It just didn't feel like a game that is gonna be ready in a month. This game feels like it needs a couple more months in the oven. This feels like a game that needs to be delayed to really polish everything out. While I'm sure they're going to fix some of these bugs come launch, I don't feel like a couple weeks is enough to fix all of these issues. I feel like this game's going to launch pretty buggy. I would be prepared for that. Though, you know, if I'm proven wrong, that'd be fantastic. Narratively, the story, this is what I wanted to close off on because it's the most uncertain thing. It's really hard to judge right now, but I'll say that the beta didn't boost my confidence in the game's narrative. I don't know, I like the setup of like the Avengers being split apart, the band breaking up, if you will, because of this catastrophic event that happened, and first going through the process of reuniting them. There is a bit of intriguing elements to that setup. So far, in terms of what the beta showed, like, aside from that setup, that initial A-Day mission, the intro mission, everything else about the game's plot felt very generic. Like, every mission was just basically, oh no, something bad's happening, we gotta go hack the thing, we gotta clear out that base, we gotta defeat those enemy forces. It just basically felt like the mission objectives were the plot of the missions, and there was just no significant story developments or character developments. Though, of course, the campaign is something that they're keeping close to their chest. The campaign could potentially change that quite a bit. They might have a lot of narrative and character moments in the campaign that can make me do a complete 180 when it comes to my stance on the game's story. But right now, aside from an interesting setup, I'm not intrigued by the game's plot all that much. But it could just be that I just haven't seen enough of the game, and I really want to hold out judgment until I play the whole campaign, because it really was just bits of the campaign for the beta and then a whole bunch of these other like side missions that seem to play less of a narrative role. So I really hope that the campaign will really hook me and really make me fall in love with the characters who I had trouble connecting because of the kind of cringy dialogue and because just not a lot happened, and I don't know, I didn't quite feel the chemistry between the characters. But yeah, what it basically comes down to is that we've got solid sort of beat 'em up fighting combat mechanics that are marred by boring and just not particularly enthralling mission designs. The kind of boring loot aspect of it that doesn't really give you that sense of progression. Just the gameplay loop is very just kind of generic looter shooter, or in this case looter brawler. Generic really is the word that keeps sticking out to me in my head when I play this game. Nothing about this game really stands out. It isn't like the most awful thing I've played, far from it. It's an average experience so far that can hold its own, and that I'm sure can provide certain people with sort of mindless beat-em-up multiplayer fun with an Avengers coat of paint. But nothing about this game really screams exceptional. Nothing about it screams, this is the Avengers game I've been waiting for. It's an Avengers game of some kind. It's a looter shooter, looter brawler Avengers game. And, you know, I was willing to give it a chance, and it's not that I have sort of this hate towards looter shooters or anything. I think there are looter games that do a really good job of really making the loot gameplay loop feel really good. Marvel's Avengers, I feel like, isn't really a fantastic looter game. It's, as a beat-em-up action game, it's just okay, it's alright, but not exceptional. It feels like it's one of those like jack of all trades, master of none types of experiences, except marred by technical issues that are deeply disconcerting given that the game's coming out pretty soon. So yeah, I don't know what else to say other than that. It just feels like it takes every generic aspect of looter type games, shoves it into a Marvel package, you know, Avengers package, and they're just like getting it out there. And it feels like the monetization aspect will influence how the game's balanced. Just looking at sort of the marketplace, it does feel like they're really going to drive monetization harder than people might be happy with. I don't know. These are just my concerns currently. Of course, I'll try to review the game when it releases. But I don't know. I wish I could say I felt this game and that I got really into it and that I had a blast with it. I personally, based on what I played on the beta, would not recommend it at launch at least. Maybe we'll see how this game ships and then eventually develops. But I would not say this is a safe pre-order by any means or safe purchase at launch. But time will tell. That's my take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Marvel's Avengers based on what you played. Did you enjoy it? I know there are people who did enjoy it. Nothing against that. I and many others really just did not and expected more out of this title. But share your thoughts, drop a comment, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.